Royal Battle Hill in front of you. It was here that Prince Krax, a legendary city founder, wooden castle was built in the 7th century. All Krakow princes and kings were residing here later on. It is here that the most important buildings in our history are located. The Royal Castle and the Babel Cathedral, where crowning ceremonies, royal burials, christening ceremonies, and festive anniversary masses took place. And it is here as well that some of the most renowned individuals were buried among kings. Tadeusz Kościuszko, Adam Mickiewicz, Julius Swabatski, Prince Poniatowski, Józef Piłsudski, and General Sikorski. Also the relics of Saint Stanislaus, the patron of the nation, and the blessed Vincente Kadlubek are to be found here. Just as the kings used to follow the royal tract for their crowning ceremony, and return to the main market square the following day to receive homage from citizens. So does the procession from Joseph Piłsudski's grave towards the Tadeusz is looking at us from the back of his horse. It was in Krakow where he prepared the biggest national uprising during the partitioning of the country.
If you want louder,
in the main market
it's good for you or not?
Oh yeah, a little louder.
Up the hill.
Oh, there we go.
All contribution reminders, which remind us of the great Poles who did not spare means for rescuing Wawel Castle during the interwar years. No indispensable major works like these on the hill would be possible after the Austrians left their barracks, without the support of contributors. And finally, please pay attention to the Sigismund Tower, the one with the huge window with bars, behind which the most famous bell in Poland is situated. It was founded by King Sigismund the Elder in 1520, and it continually and unceasingly reminds us of the most crucial moments of our history, of our anniversaries, of our national days and church festivals. It is here that Poland's heart is constantly beating.
But I wanted to read it. They wouldn't let me. Yeah, all over Europe. All Europe. Yep. That's right. Hell no. Europe has all this old shit. You gotta come see all this cool stuff. Yeah, this is our motherland. Our ancestors came from. Yeah. All our ancestors came from Europe.
Krakow Planted Park. It's a unique park in Europe as it was created exactly in the place of the former city fortifications, which were destroyed at the beginning of the 19th century. That is in the times of the Austrian rule in Poland. After the city walls had been demolished, the untidy area, with its bogs and airborne unpleasant smell, became a serious problem. Therefore, in 1817, the Senate of the autonomous, at that time, city of Krakow, adopted a resolution to set up an original garden here, constituting as of the green lungs of the city. The moats were dried, lawns and playgrounds created, chestnut trees, Lombarded poplars, and even some more exotic plants which had never before been seen in Poland were planted along the alley banks. Very soon, Planted Park became the Krakowians' beloved place for walking, leisure, and revere. It was only since the 80s of the 19th century that some monuments started appearing in the Planta area, putting in remembrance some important historical persons, kings, writers, and great Krakowians. Nowadays, the Krakow Planted Park covers the area of 20 hectares and surrounds the old town with a 4-kilometer ring whose shape exactly depicts the former middle-aged city borders. We are going along Shenna Street, which is situated in the former Butchers District. It was this way that cattle was driven for slaughter from the small market square to the nearby slaughterhouse. Also, hay trading took place in this area. Thus the street name, which has been in use since the 15th century, is Shenna. That is, Hay Street.
When we were little,
The Holy
Pope
Cross
was
Street,
John Paul
which used to be
II, the
called
first Pope
Swine or
from
Hospital
Poland.
Street in the Middle Ages.
Much beloved.
One of the street inhabitants used to be the owner of Okocim Brewery, Julius August John. His brewing house exists up until this day. At the very end of the street, you may observe the solid figure of the Gothic Holy Cross Church.
He began production of Okocim beer. Okocim beer is very famous beer.
Oh, he was a beer maker.
Yeah, it's like he was
Famous brewer.
big beer maker. Century.
This building here? Oh, we saw this
we-
before.
We walked by here yesterday. We thought, and we're like, damn, that looks old.
Wow.
Yes, he's the
So
old-
that's from the
That's the oldest
1300s?
1300s.
even older.
Oh my goodness.
Kurziza Street, huh?
Wow.
Look here.
The medieval Holy Cross Church, with its well-marked defensive elements, is an exceptional sanctuary of Krakow's scenery. Some priceless paintings date back to the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries have been preserved inside. The church's weight rests upon one central pillar, as well as on stone. It is here that the great painter Jan Matejko was baptized, which is probably the reason why Krakow artists take a liking for this church more than for any other.
It's all church standing only on the one column. Very specific building.
Cool. Oh, cool.
Don't like. They don't like the Americans.
No?
The huge eclectic structure of the Julius Swabatski Theater appeared at the end of the 19th century. Many renowned architects from all over Europe competed in the theater design contest. The inauguration of the theater took place on the 21st of October, 1893. The winner of the contest, Jan Zawieski, received a commendatory letter from the very Charles Gardner, the author of the Paris Opera House design. The inauguration was a great event for all representatives of Polish culture scattered all around the world, and the theater soon became a symbol of the Polish character. The inscription on the fronton of the facade, saying, "Krakow for the National Arts," is to remind that the theater has been funded by public contribution. The theater can seat about 920 persons. It has excellent acoustics, gorgeous interiors, and a precious stage curtain in the form of a huge oil painting. In front of the theater there is Alexander Fredro's bust. This renowned Polish comedy writer was originally to be the theater's patron.
In the past, around Old Town was the wall. And was seven gates. Only one left. There's one left because the other one only this one left.
You can see St. Florian's Gate. It used to be a representative city entrance. It was this way that the kings would process with their entourage before being crowned in the cathedral, and this way that the most important guests and merchants would approach the city. Finally, it was this direction that the bugle caller would, for the third time in a row, symbolically play his bugle call for those arriving to the city. The gate displays St. Florian's figure. He was a religious martyr. He is the patron of the city as well as a fireman. St. Florian has always been protecting people from fire. Fires were, after all, one of the greatest dangers, especially in medieval cities. Here you can see him extinguishing a fire too. Underneath St. Florian, you may observe the municipal coat of arms in the form of an open gate, symbolizing hospitality, a feature Krakow has always been famous for.
Okay, for the moment, on the left side we will see Barbican. In Poland, it's only two Barbican. In Warsaw is one, and in Krakow is another one. It's here. Barbican. Do you know what is it?
Okay.
Give me a second. See, very nice.
So there's one in Krakow, one in Warsaw?
Exactly. But in Warsaw is replica.
Oh, it's a replica.
It was a replica. This one is original. It wasn't having been
So the-
destroyed.
The World War II did not destroy Krakow, but Warsaw.
Krakow was having been destroyed.
Oh, a little bit? Or, I don't know.
I think it's important.
The Barbican is an exceptional example of Europe's defensive architecture. It was built of brick in a Gothic style at the end of the 15th century for the purpose of additional protection of the city northern side and for defending the Florian Gate. The Barbican has a shape of a saucepan and thus the name. Its diameter is about 25 meters and it has 130 chessboard laid out embrasures used for shooting from both light and heavy weapons as well as cannons. The Barbican was joined with St. Florian's Gate by means of a covered passageway, which also protected a drawbridge situated over the moat. The moat around the Barbican was up to 24 meters wide, and its water level could be regulated.
Look now on the right side. It's Władysław on the horse, and on the back is Santa Florian the church.
Wow.
Who's the guy on the horse?
Władysław Jagielloń.
Oh, Władysław.
This guy is on the our money, 100 PLN. He's on the picture because he was the king.
The first king or just one of the kings?
Yeah, 45. Now our king is
Very good.
The Czartoryski Museum.
Museum Czartoryski.
The Museum of the Czartoryski Princes is the oldest museum in Poland. It was founded by Princess Izabela Czartoryska, who began collecting for her estate some national relics and works of art endangered with either plunder or destruction during the partitions of the country. The princess's motto, placed above the entrance to the Temple of the Sibyl, was, quote, "the past to the future." Close quote. When the situation in Poland became more peaceful, the collection was transferred to Krakow, where, with immense help from the city, a museum was established. The great treasure of the exhibition is The Lady with an Ermine, painted by the very Leonardo da Vinci. At the crossroads hides a tiny church of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. You can see the painting of the graceful Mother of God in the clear story of its facade. Inside the church, there's a miraculous painting presenting the Mother of God redeeming the slaves. Among many votive offerings placed next to the painting, one curious item is the chains offered by a prisoner who, due to an intercession from the Mother of God, was miraculously rescued from slavery. The most important monument in the main market square is St. Mary's Church, built in Gothic style. Artist Wiec Stos came to Krakow in the 15th century and made the church's main decoration, its altar. The artist devoted 12 years of his life to this one piece of work, and he was awarded an honorary citizenship of the city, obviously, together with a payment equal to the city's annual budget. According to the legend, building the church was associated with a tragic event. Two workers who were brothers were each constructing a tower for the church. The older brother, who in the end had finished building his church tower earlier, during construction jealously observed his younger sibling catching up with him on his work. The older brother mortally stabbed the younger one with a knife, and the murder tool is hanging in the Sukienica cloth hall up until this day, which reminds us of those events. The Hejnalica Bogol Call Tower, which is the higher one, functioned as a watchtower and had always belonged to the city. The bugle caller would always play his trump in the morning as a calling to open the city gates and signal the end of the day in the evening. He would also play the bugle call to warn the city dwellers against danger, thus being the person responsible for the city's safety. In 1241, when Krakow was once again invaded by the Tartars, the bugle caller was shot with an arrow and killed. This is why, in keeping with the legend, the bugle melody is not played till the end, but suddenly stops, in mid-tone. Nowadays, the bugle is played from the top window of the church tower every hour to the four corners of the globe. Exceptionally, once a year, to commemorate the anniversary of John Paul's death, the bugler plays the barge. This song was the Pope's favorite song, and it's played on the 2nd of April at 9:37 p.m. Szczepański Square. At the corner of Szczepański Square and Jagiellonian Street, you can see the oldest theater building in Poland, Old Theater. The most splendid building in the square is the Secessionist Palace of Arts, erected by the Society of Fine Arts Friends, whose aim was to popularize both Polish and foreign arts, as well as organize periodic exhibitions. The exhibitions take place there to this day. The building is encircled with frieze created by a well-known painter, Jacek Milczewski, meant to depict the diversity of artistic life and the hardships of creating. That is, both the happy and tragic lot of an artist.
The theater, old theater.
Oh, that's the old theater?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
The old theater, one of the oldest theaters.
We are now on St. Anne Street, which used to be called the Jewish Street, as a large group of Jews used to live here. The street's name was taken after St. Anne's Church, which is situated here. The church amazes with its magnificent Baroque facade. The 18th century organs, which can be heard during numerous concerts, belong to the most splendid instruments of the Baroque period.
This church inside is one of the most nicer. Nice?
Yeah, most nice. Or one of the nicest.
Nicest, yes. Sorry. Nicest church.
We are passing the oldest university building, Collegium Maus. The Krakow Academy was renowned in 1400. A university district was formed in this block of streets at that time. After the year 1364, when King Kazimierz the Great founded the university, its first students probably had classes in the royal castle. The ground floor of Collegium Maus housed the reading room. The first floor, the library and the professors' flats. Nowadays, some very precious collections can be found here. Astronomical, physical, and chemical instruments, globes which serve as a reminder of the fact that one of the most famous students of the university was Nicholas Copernicus. All those collections prove how rich the history of this second oldest Central European university was.
It's nice. From other side.
That's also the university?
Yes.
And Copernicus studied here?
Yes.
No shit. Wow.
And so we have reached the biggest medieval European square, the main market square. The municipal laws were granted to Krakow in 1257. The judicial power and city authorities were established at this time. The center constitutes a 200 by 200 meter square where the main city facilities are located. The city hall functioning as the city authorities facility, the Sukienica cloth hall constituting a trade facility, and St. Mary's Church as a place of worship. Everything has been preserved here as it used to be. The square surface has never been substantially changed throughout the centuries, and neither has it been diminished, nor have any additional buildings been added. Permanent residents of the main market square act as its guardians at the same time, and they're the Krakow pigeons, who, according to the legend, are actually the spellbound knights. The Franciscan Church. In front of us you can see St. Francis of Assisi's Church in all its glory. The Franciscans came to Krakow in the 13th century. The church took 30 years to build, and it is one of the first churches made of brick. The Brotherhood of Good Death has been operating here since the 16th century. The Brotherhood had the right to release one person sentenced to death from prison each year. Nowadays is one of its kind in Europe, and anonymousness is still one of its basic rules. Therefore, the Brotherhood members put on black hoods during Good Friday processions. Inside the Franciscan Church, you may find famous stained glass windows, among them being the huge God the Father, which depicts the act of creation. The size of this huge stained glass is 8.5 by 4 meters, and it amazes the viewers with magnificent light effects depending on the time of day and night. The Pope's Window. We are now at a place where the most touching meetings with the Pope John Paul II took place. When the Pope was Krakow's cardinal, the bishop's palace used to be his home, and during his visits to the homeland, it was in this window over the main gate that he stood until late night talking to people.
Oh.
Yes, he was supposed to speaking with people on this place.
Here comes the talk.
Kazimierz. Welcome to the district of Kazimierz. Join us for a trip around the place where two worlds meet. The worlds of Christians on the one hand, and the world of Jews on the other. We will take a ride to a town once separated from Krakow by the Vistula's arm, at that time surrounded by city walls. Ritual 1. Holidays. In Jewish culture, holidays play a very important part, dating far back to the essential events in the history of the Jewish nation. The most important is the Sabbath. It is celebrated in the memory of God's rest after the 6 days of creating the world. It starts on Friday evening and ends on Saturday at dusk. Any work is forbidden during the holiday. Even burning fire and cooking are prohibited.
This day was really because the Jewish quarter, whole town was different cities, separated exactly one block. But now it's together. The Jewish quarter is much better.
Jews, Part 1. Jews have been connected with Krakow since the early Middle Ages. The first character coming from a Krakowian Jewish background, a widely known person managing the mint and leasing the salt mines of Wieliczka and Bochnia, was Lewko. In 1495, an important event decided that the Jews appeared in Kazimierz. King John I, Albert Jan Olbracht, basing his decision on an accusation of Jews to have set fire to St. Anne's Church, removed the Jews from Krakow. It was then that Kazimierz became the hub of Jewish culture, a place where, as some wise men say, Israel could have been preserved. As early as in the 16th century, Kazimierz was the largest Jewish cluster in Europe. Kupa Synagogue. The Yiddish word kupa denotes treasure, cash, or something of high value. It was built with the use of Kahal's funds. Kahal is Jewish commune. It originated in the 17th century, built for the poorest members of the Jewish community. Therefore, it is sometimes called the poor or hospital synagogue, as there was a Jewish hospital situated nearby. The synagogue building was adjacent to the ramparts, and their remains can be clearly seen nearby. It sometimes played various roles, being not only a place of prayer, but also a house for poor craftsmen.
Do you see this fragment of the wall?
Oh,
Because in the past, around Jewish quarter was the wall.
oh,
They
built a wall around the Jews so they couldn't
Exactly.
get out. Wow.
was closed,
That's
but
rude.
you can go inside, but
Dang.
and it's one of the fragment, and another one I show you later.
Okay.
Because only 2 fragments left.
Okay.
Kupa, kupa means something like cheap.
Isaac Synagogue.
Synagogue is on the left side.
In front of you, there is the Isaac Synagogue, once the richest in furnishings of all synagogues in Kazimierz. When it was built in the 17th century, plain wooden houses were located nearby, which made it look even more monumental. You can see wooden stairs from the outside, which led to the Bevy, a place where Jewish women prayed. In front of the synagogue, there was quite a large square where fish were sold until 1939. Here, in December 1939, the Nazis murdered Maximilian Redlich, the clerk of the Jewish commune, because he did not carry out their command to set fire to the temple.
Okay, now we are on the park.
Nova Square.
Nova Square.
We are at Nova Square. It still has the special atmosphere of an open-air market, full of noise, where you can buy fruit, vegetables, old knickknacks, and at times also some real rarities, antiques brought here by the locals. There is a multitude of cafes and pubs where you can go clubbing and listen to good music. A ritual poultry slaughterhouse was situated in a characteristic building in the center. Today, you can eat the best zapiekanki, or bread toasts, in Krakow, sold almost around the clock.
Here is the best zapiekanki.
Oh.
It's a very fine place.
It's toast.
It's zapiekanka is something like the baguettes, and the top is ham, cheese, mushroom, and it's something like pizza, but it's not circle, but long one.
Oh, wow.
It's very good.
The Old Synagogue.
Old Synagogue,
The Old Synagogue is one of the earliest synagogues in Poland and the most valuable one in Europe. It is built in the Renaissance style, designed by a Florentine, Matteo Gucci. A portal leading to the synagogue reads the following inscription: "This is God's gate, and the just shall pass through it." The courtyard in front of the synagogue was a place for weddings, and the bima was used for royal announcements and curses put on unyielding citizens. Tadeusz Kościuszko gave his speech in the synagogue during the Kościuszko military uprising. Here, Jews blessed King Kazimierz the Great, their benefactor, before the war began. Presently, the building houses the Historical Museum, whose exhibitions depict the customs and everyday lives of Jews. In its front, there is an obelisk commemorating an execution of 30 Poles by the firing squad on October 28, 1943.
This is one of the last fragments of the wall.
Oh, that's the other
The
one.
first one I did see you. This is another one.
Szeroka Street. We are coming into Szeroka Street, which is the heart of the Jewish Kazimierz. The life of the Jewish community focused here. The majority of synagogues stood here, as many as 4, together with the Kahal seat, the mikveh, a Jewish bath, and 2 cemeteries. Szeroka Street, Part 2. Popper Synagogue. We are going further along Szeroka Street. The famous Jewish Culture Festival takes place here in the summer. You can taste kosher dishes and listen to klezmer music in the evening in the restaurants on the right. Number 16 is where the passage to Popper Synagogue can be found. A wealthy merchant, Wolf Popper, was known in the 17th century in the merchant community of Europe. He had an exceptional habit to stand on one leg while praying.
This green house was born Helena Rubenstein, and the second for the next is Krakow Rubenstein.
Rubenstein. It is the place where the Empress of Beauty, Helena Rubenstein, was born. When she died in 1965, her property was estimated at $100 million. She was one of the wealthiest women in the world. She was called the Empress of Beauty by Jean Cocteau. She created her empire of cosmetics, starting in Australia, through London and Paris, and ending with New York. Her face powder compact was designed by Salvador Dali. The HR initials have remained on the most expensive jars of cream advertised by Demi Moore. There are no ugly women, only the lazy ones, claimed Helena Rubenstein. In the last building on the right, there was the ritual Jewish bath called mikveh.
This place is, this stone is symbol about date of 65,000 Jews, Jewish people on the death.
65,000.
65,000.
There's 65,000 Jews murdered in the Holocaust in this neighborhood.
By the German people, by the
Nazis.
we got to get there and show them our trip. Get there also.
Oh,
There's a few. Remo Synagogue.
Remo Synagogue. You can see the only active synagogue for Orthodox Jews, a 16th century Remo Synagogue. It is named after a highly educated philosopher, Rabbi Moses Isserles. There is a plaque in the synagogue which says where he likes to pray, and there still is a chair booked for him. Jews from all over the world come to the cemetery adjacent to the synagogue to visit his grave. It was a miracle that the cemetery was not destroyed during World War II.
Cemetery is here, and there's many young cars he saved 2 wagons. This is mikvah, but this mikvah is now closed.
What's a mikvah?
This mikvah is the same place at the hotel, like at the hotel.
The shower place.
Shower place, but this mikvah is underground, but now it's a restaurant with klezmer. There is Jewish restaurant, Jewish style. See, on the wall you can see what you can eat.
Oh, sure.
Inside, live music inside.
They put a lot of effort into keeping the Jews He's in what neighborhood? It's a big expense.
Prison of Gestapo.
The prison.
But
the
really,
Gestapo prison.
Prison. Yes. So now it's
St. Laurent Street. We are going further along St. Laurent Street, marked out in 1335 during the location of the city by King Kazimierz the Great. An exceptional museum located here is included in the Krakow's route of technology. It is the Museum of City Engineering, consisting of the buildings of the former streetcar depot, power plant, and gasworks. You can see museum exhibitions concerning the history of city transport in Krakow, an exhibition of technical vehicles, multiple boards and photographs, also reconstructions of tramcars, an exhibition of approximately 30 vehicles, cars and motorcycles produced in Poland after the war, and some unique 19th century appliances for manual production of candles from A. Rove's manufacture. Corpus Christi Church. There is another Gothic church in front of us, erected by King Kazimierz the Great. According to the legend, it was built in a place where the host and monstrance stolen from All Saints Church were found. The thieves thought them to be of little value. Hence the name Church of Corpus Christi. The church, like St. Mary's Church in Krakow, played the role of a city church. Therefore, it was taken care of by the wealthy patriarchate. They spared no money on the temple's decorations. Here, the ceremonious liturgies were performed. The church is surrounded by a 2.5-meter wall from the 17th century. Cells for criminals, who were put on display, have been preserved and they are located at the entrance.
Wolnica Square is here and Museum of Ethnographic Museum. And show you cell phone criminals. Also already seen through this door. If someone might have seen something bad, then it was closed in this place. Hello.
Oh, okay.
This
So
place.
that's a jail cell that everyone can look at who's in jail.
Yes.
Oh.
It's a public humiliation thing.
Public showing, you know.
Mm-hmm. I can feel bad for.
Okay, now we are on the Church Street. In this place, Jewish quarter was separated because on the left side was living Jewish people, on the right side was living some Christian people. Because on the right side is the church.
Oh.
On the left side is
Temple Synagogue. It is the youngest and the most magnificent synagogue in Kazimierz. It was built in the 19th century. It clearly differs from traditional Jewish synagogues. The interior decor is of Mauritanian style. Its double windows are decorated with 34 valuable stained glass ornaments from the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. Celebrations in the temple were rather similar to the masses in Christian temples. Weekly preachments were introduced to be sermonized consecutively in Polish and German by preachers of academic education. During the 20-year period between the wars, women could sing in the choir, and, which is even more unacceptable for the Orthodox followers, hymns were accompanied by the organ. During World War II, the synagogue, like other Jewish places of worship, was desecrated and looted by the Nazis, and turned into a storehouse and stables for horses. Renovations started soon after the war. As the temple was put on the list of monuments of the American World Monument Fund from New York, it was granted as much as $1 million for renovation. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to give you a warm welcome at a tour which will acquaint you with a somewhat sad but important part of Krakow's history. There are numerous monuments connected with the history of Jews in Krakow. The most important ones are concentrated in the Kazimierz district, where Jews used to live for centuries, and they constitute a significant society of this city history. The World War II and Nazi occupation brought about extermination of the Krakow Jews who were relocated to a ghetto, gradually sent to extermination camps, killed in Ploshów labor camp, or shot during ghetto liquidation in 1943. Out of the 68,000 Jews who had been living in Krakow before 1939, 65,000 were gone. We will follow the lot of those for whom the places we'll see today were often the last stage of their earthly path of life. In order to the ghetto area, we need to cross the bridge over the Vistula River. It is the same bridge the Jews banished from Kazimierz district crossed. They took whatever was easiest to pack, the most essential items, and they were carrying chairs in their hands. Chairs have acquired a symbolic meaning since then. You'll be able to see them in the form of an open-air exhibition in the Ghetto Heroes Square, toward which we are heading. Please imagine that we are moving to Podgórze, which used to be a separate town in the past, settled by the Austrians in 1784 and incorporated into Krakow only at the beginning of the 20th century. It was here that the Nazis set up a ghetto for the Jewish inhabitants of Krakow and its surrounding areas in March 1941. The Nazis surrounded the ghetto with a wall with 4 entrance gates, of which the main one, neighboring Podgórski Square, was decorated with a huge Star of David and a Yiddish note, Jewish Residential District. A tram used to pass through the ghetto, but it would never stop there. Another gate used to be situated at the end of the bridge we're crossing now.
And on the right side, we see Place of Heroes. It's curious about this place. It's 65 chairs on this place.
Oh, the chairs.
Each chair is a symbol about 1,000 Jews.
Oh, each chair is 1,000 Jews killed.
So you're right, Richie.
Ghetto Heroes Square and Under the Eagle Pharmacy. In front of us, you can see the Ghetto Heroes Square from which the Jews were taken to extermination camps. It was here that many deaths by firing squad took place, especially during the ghetto liquidation in 1943. The witnesses of the events in the Krakow ghetto who survived and were not Jews were Tadeusz Pankiewicz and his 2 workers, all of them of Polish origin. We are standing in front of the house, number 18, where the historical museum branch called Under the Eagle Pharmacy is located today. The pharmacy was an important place of contact and a place where false documents were handed on. The escape route led through here. Tadeusz Pankiewicz observed horrendous scenes that took place in the square while he was working at the pharmacy. He often left the ghetto, brought back medicine, helped people living there, and quite often he also hid threatened Jews at his place. Thanks to his account, we know what everyday life in the ghetto looked like and what the last minutes of the lives of the ghetto inhabitants looked like. Pankiewicz survived the war and described his memories in the book entitled The Krakow Ghetto Pharmacy. He was frequently invited to meetings as a witness of those horrible years of occupation and was awarded a Medal of the Righteous among the nations. Tadeusz Pankiewicz died in 1993 and was buried in Krakow Rakowicki Cemetery. A famous ghetto inhabitant who managed to survive the war was Roman Polański, a renowned film director. The whole Polański family was relocated to the ghetto. Roman's father survived the war, but Roman's mother and sister died in an extermination camp. Polański escaped from the ghetto as a little boy, by which he saved his life, and hid at a country family's place near Wadowice under a false name, Roman Wilk. In 2002, Roman Polański gave away his award granted by the Polish Culture Foundation, which he had received for his film entitled The Pianist, to Under the Eagle Pharmacy in the museum branch. House number 6 was the seat of the Jewish Combat Organization, a secret armed unit which organized, among other things, the most dangerous Nazi assassinations, liquidated collaborators, and acquired means for weapons. Once a year in March, a March of Remembrance sets off from the Ghetto Heroes Square to the labor camp in Płażów to commemorate the anniversary of the Krakow ghetto liquidation. Schindler's List, a film, on the way to the factory. We are now moving along the industrial Zabłocza Street towards the Schindler's factory. Podgórze hardly used to be a touristic district of Krakow before 1993. The greatest interest in this part of the city really began after the film Schindler's List was made. In March 1993, Krakow became a huge film set. Shooting the film took 72 days, that is, 4 days fewer than it had been planned. The film crew was predominantly Polish, with some additional workers from England, Croatia, Austria, Germany, Canada, Israel, and the USA, including many Americans of Polish origin. Such original places like the Schindler's old factory and his elegant Krakow apartment have not changed for 50 years. The film was made on the basis of the book by Thomas Kennelly, who accidentally met Leopold Pfefferberg, a Jew whose life had been rescued by Oskar Schindler. Pfefferberg told Kennelly a story of a German entrepreneur, Schindler, and handed down numerous testimonies and documents attesting the event, including the very list of the rescued Krakow Jews. The film describes a history of a German businessman, Schindler, who came to occupy Krakow and started an enamel dish factory there. A cheap, or indeed free, workforce at the factory were local Jews forced to work by the Nazis. The Nazi and Lusung plan came into force in 1943, which was to be an ultimate solution of the Jewish question. The Krakow ghetto was liquidated. People turned out to the street and were transported to Płażów labor camp. Seeing this tragedy, Schindler decided to rescue Jews from extermination by buying ineffective workers out. Steven Spielberg created the film in a black and white version. 40% of the scenes were shot with manual cameras. This is how the famous director commented on his film. "I was trying to be close to the events, like a journalist recording this reconstruction, more than as a filmmaker trying to intensify the suspense, plot, or pathos." Black and white colors, as well as manual cameras, added some cinema verite, or documentary tone, to the film. All of this embodies the truth about what happened, the truth which we were trying to present and communicate. Somehow, it all made the film seem more real. Spielberg hoped that Schindler's List would recover awareness of the Holocaust and would help to encourage the viewers to discover the Holocaust heritage in a modern society. Nobody is able to change the past, admits Spielberg, but a film like this one can influence us, pointing to things which must never happen again. Schindler's Factory. We are standing in front of the main entrance to Schindler's factory. It was through this gate that Jews from the ghetto used to pass when going to work. They were those lucky Jews who were on the list of workers employed here. The gate appears in Spielberg's film many times and constitutes a specific symbol. For the 1,200 Jews working there, it was a gate leading to freedom. The factory produced enamel army pots, mess tins, armor-piercing shot shells, and bomb detonators, all for the German army. In the second half of 1944, when the Eastern Front was approaching Krakow, Schindler moved his factory to Moravia, situated in the former Czechoslovakia. Nowadays, the place functions as a World War II memorial and a museum where the Krakow Jews history exhibition can be seen. Take a look at the commemorative tablet once again, please. It was embedded here in October 2003 and shows a Talmud quotation which also inspired Spielberg. "Whoever saves one life saves the entire world."
Give me a second, I show you this tablet because it was